George St. Pierre versus Chris Weidman. Two amazing wrestlers, two great fighters. Both these guys were ex-UFC champions. Chris Weidman was the middleweight champion, and he held that championship for about 3 years, while George St. Pierre, after his loss at UFC 69, went on a 12-fight winning streak and held his title for about 6 years. And 6 years is a long time, a really long time to hold the title in UFC. Chris Weidman lost his title to Luke Rockhold, but we know from watching him fight that he's really dangerous. He is probably the best wrestler in the 185-pound division, and he's a tough challenge for any fighter. George St. Pierre has never fought at 185 pounds, and fighting Chris Weidman in one of the first fights back is a real tough test for George St. Pierre. We will see if George St. Pierre is still at top level, or if the past 3 years away from the cage has caused ring rust or just, the end of George St. Pierre. He might not be the same. So Chris Weidman needs a fight. He's coming back, and he went out there on social media and called out for this fight. He said he wants to fight George St. Pierre. And who could blame him? George St. Pierre is considered the GOAT by many, one of the greatest of all time, and maybe the top three with Anderson Silva and Fedor, and he still holds that aura of greatness. His legacy has not been tainted or tarnished. And I'm sure Chris Weidman wants to tarnish it. Now, Chris Weidman won his title to the great one, Anderson Silva. And during those 6 years, when George St. Pierre was a champion, so was Anderson Silva. And we really want to see that super fight clash between Anderson Silva and George St. Pierre. And it's something that we've just never seen. And, if we never get to see that, this is almost as good of a treat. Chris Weidman versus George St. Pierre really would be in a magnificent fight. Styles make fights, and this would be between two amazing wrestlers. Chris Weidman has power in his fists, and George St. Pierre is the master at game plans. He's a master at figuring out his opponent, and he's also great at taking down guys that we've never seen taken down. Guys that are really hard to take down, like Chris Weidman. So I think it would be really interesting to see if George St. Pierre could take down Chris Weidman, or Chris Weidman could take down George St. Pierre, or vice versa. I think that would be interesting within itself. I personally feel like George St. Pierre is one of the greatest fighters of all time for a reason. If you look at the way he moves compared to Chris Weidman, if you look at his foot movement and you look at the way he just carries himself around the cage, you know that George St. Pierre is the faster guy, and he's able to attack from more angles. While Chris Weidman, in comparison to George St. Pierre, would be almost flat-footed. I don't want to call him a flat-footed fighter, but compared to George St. Pierre, that's what we see. We also know that Chris Weidman's base was wrestling, while George St. Pierre was one of the first guys to really develop as a true mixed martial artist from the golden era, when fighters really just were really good at one thing, and mixed martial arts hadn't really been evolved. Now, George St. Pierre changed that and really made MMA what it is today. He really took the sport to a whole new level. I think that George St. Pierre is a little bit older, and he's been away from the sport for a long time, but I think that he's been training, and he's always had his eye on the sport, and he always knew he was going to come back, and I really feel like 35, 36 is the right time to do it. So I'm going to go with George St. Pierre, and I'm going to say I think he could beat Chris Weidman at 185 pounds. Do you agree or disagree? Let me know. If you're in the Seattle area and you're looking to paint anything, house, whatever it is, check out our sponsor, Aardvark Painting. They actually sponsor a lot of MMA fighters, including Tanya Evinger and Roxanne Modafari. So if you're in the Seattle area and you're thinking of hiring a painting service and you don't know who to choose, check out our sponsor, Aardvark. Phone number's right there. Thanks, guys. Peace out.